11.1 has finally arrived, and nothing celebrates our arrival like a bunch of goblins with questionable levels of experience and explosives. But fret not, Moosin is here to help you with these survival notes to live your best PvP Guardian life with as few singed hairs as possible going into Season 2. Starting right into it, we are going to cover the Druid changes, Guardian updates, general PvP, seasonal things, including key changes to a few other classes as they are important to be aware of, before jumping into stat priority, gearing, and enchants. We will also go into the new talent trees and look at the recommended flag carrying build, base sitting build, and finally a Blitz Dps build, as being stuck on a tank class isn't the most useful when not on an appropriate map. Also be sure to stay to the end so you can hear how you can claim WoW tokens while I'm streaming, as we celebrate 2 years of making content and helping people. Starting with the new general Druid changes, I'm going to go ahead and put them up here so you can look while I talk. But overall, the rework just frees up multiple points and allows for better pathing and utility. In general, you can see a lot of buffs to the overall damage, as well as a couple more notable changes like Kara's Meditation, which allows you to maintain Kara's Teachings bonus from your most recent shapeshift form for 5 seconds. Symbiotic Relationship, which allows you to form a bond with an ally where your self-healing also heals your bonded ally for 10%, which in turn also heals you for another 8%. This one is questionable going into PvP, but does have possibility. Asena's Renewal to even out damage by an auto heal over 30 seconds, replacing Renewal if chosen. Ursoc's Spirit update to increase your stamina by 4% with an additional 5% when in bear form. The return of Moonkin form and the ability to flap. Cyclone's duration being nerfed down to 5 seconds. And the hero talent Ravage damage being reduced by 8%. On to the Guardian specific changes, we have a new talent Ursol's Warding, which provides 5 to 10% magic damage reduction based on your armor, albeit small, but nice. We also have changes to Reinvigoration, Button Bloat being reduced with Raze sharing the same keybind with Maul, with its damage profile being aligned between the two. And probably the biggest for us being the 26% increased damage because of being a tank spec. Speaking of the increased damage, we still have another 20% increase to Moonfire, 10 to Mangle, 8 to Maul, and 8 to Raze. Layered Main has also been removed and Fury of Loon damage increased by 80%. So overall, these are all positive changes, and I'm not going to complain about that, as it's more attention than Guardian received last season, although the defensive changes still do not keep up with the DPS buffs when looking at other classes in PvP. Looking at the PvP changes as a whole, we have some new items, Conqueror's Prized Varnish and Conqueror's Prized Lacquer, which allow the PvE players an opportunity to turn their PvE gear into PvP viable pieces, similar to how PvP players can upgrade their gear. Speaking of that PvE gear, our set pieces are once again reduced by 50% in PvP. We also see some changes to the Battleground Blitz modes where the spawn times for flags has been increased. And speaking of maps, we do have the addition of the new arena, Cage of Carnage. Returning this season, we have the 1600 Mastery Achievement. However, how it works has changed. In the previous seasons, you could receive an item that you could take and redeem for a piece of gear. Instead, now you receive an item, in this case, Crystallized Essence of Cagemite, that gives you a Catalyst charge, meaning that you have to buy the item first. Furthermore, this season's PvP mount is going to be the Vicious Electric Eel, and if you decide to push Glad this season, you get this lovely beaut. The amount of creativity is truly something. Wrapping out this section, I do want to touch on a couple PvP changes for other classes, as they were or still are red flags to look out for. First off, we have Demon Hunter with Illidan's Grasp being reworked from 40-yard throw down to 20, but more importantly, it is now an option available for Havoc. If you're not familiar, it is the ability to grab the individual, stun them for 5 seconds, and then throw them. In relation to rogues, they no longer have the PvP talent Veil of Midnight that prevented them from taking physical damage while in Cloak of Shadows, as well as Subtlety loses PvP talent Shadowy Duel. Marksmanship Hunter will be losing Interlope, which is still a mechanic to look out for in the other specs, and Evoker Sleepwalk no longer has a cooldown, so hello, new Cyclone spam. Lastly, just a friendly reminder, Blizzard is also adding a small damage threshold to break various CCs, as you see on the screen. It will be interesting what direction that they go from here. Next on our list, we have everything gearing. So going into Season 2, the stat priority for PvP stays the same, prioritizing main stat, followed by versatility, then mastery, then haste, and lastly crit. This segues the conversation to our tier sets, and as made mention of earlier, the benefits are cut in half in PvP. That aside, Blizzard has also doubled down on Season 2 disappointment by trying a role and specialization based tier system, which is lackluster to begin with, as they don't change the playstyle, or add value with the bonus of it all being RNG. However, it is still a buff, especially when off-speccing for DPS, which leads us to run the 4-piece set, with chess piece being the piece not to take. As of the set, our 2-piece gives us Luck of the Draw, a chance to activate a 4-second Survival Instinct and increase damage by 15% for 8 seconds, with our 4-piece triggering the next 10 Druid abilities to cast another Druid ability at a 125% effectiveness when Luck of the Draw gets triggered. But alright, I guess I have to say something nice here, so the class set does look amazing. As of the rest of the gearing, to be honest, the PTR has largely been focused on Blizzard's more important player base with Mythic Plus. So there is still a lot of unknown information that I'm about to generalize because we just won't know until the season goes live. That being said, I feel it is safe to say due to Blizzard's priorities with Mythic Plus, they aren't going to introduce a new formula. We should see the new Honor gear hit the vendors just above last season's Conquest, and Bloody Token gear will follow the trend of being higher than that, with Conquest gear being the capstone. I also don't anticipate Honor being reset, nor a change with how we receive the complementary weapon tokens, or how the heraldry system works in crafting. I would also go as far to say Blizzard may not even reset the PvP socket gems, all because they have literally looked at Mythic Plus as if it is a sinking ship and clearly focused all their resources on PvE. Or they could also just have been really sneaky and found some free time. I don't know. But when I do, trust me, I'll update y'all with any of the changes relative to Guardian Druid. Carrying with that same theme at the moment, myself, nor anyone I've talked to have heard anything different about new gems, enchants, or embellishments, which is unfortunate as the latter is truly underwhelming, which I find bizarre, which leads us to running the same enchants and embellishments as Season 1 that you see on the screen for a refresher. But rest assured, I will follow up if there's anything new that benefits Guardian. Alright, so on to the fun part and what y'all probably are most excited about, the recommended builds. Up first, we're going to be looking at the basic flag carrying build, which is prioritizing survivability and speed to compete with the other non-taking flag carrier metas to show them that we are just as viable and slippery. On the class side of the tree, we are grabbing Thrash because it is a primary ability, Ursoc Spirit for the stamina increase, Verdant Heart to increase healing received, Remove Corruption for removing poisons and curses, Killer Instincts to increase damage and armor, Iron Fur as it is our primary rage defensive ability, Improved Barkskin to increase duration, Nurturing Instincts to increase magical damage and healing, Thick Hide to reduce all damage taken, Skull Bash because it's very rewarding to bonk someone on the head to interrupt their cast, Natural Recovery to further increase healing, Wild Charge for variable terrain mobility because remember, the best way to deal with damage is to avoid it, for example jumping to another player, gaining distance with a leap, or maximizing a flap across the field. And Cyclone to have a CC. Now here we have a talking point and a decision to make. I don't think you're going to be wrong either way for taking Renewal or the new spell Asina's Renewal, as I think they both have their places. Currently I suggest Asina's Renewal for the flag carrying build as there are already so many buttons to press, but more importantly it is spreading out the same healing as normal Renewal, but allowing you to even out some of the ups and downs, especially since you should have a healer nearby when carrying a flag. However, if that's not the case, or for example, you are sitting a base, the normal renewal should be prioritized. On the next row, we have Feline Swiftness because every bear wants to go fast, Well-Honed Instincts for your oh crap, my health dropped and there's nothing I can do about it moments, Matted Fur to give your Barkskin and Survival Instincts an Absorb Shield when used, Stampeding Roar when you or others need to go faster, Lingering Healing to increase the healing done via Rejuve and Regrowth, which we will come back to as this one plays heavily into our bonus healing on the Guardian side of things. And then we have Mass Entanglement because tripping hazards. Second to last row we have Oak Skin, increasing our damage reduction to Barkskin and Survival Instincts. Perfectly Honed Instincts to decrease the cooldown of Well-Honed. Lycaras for stat buff. Lore of the Grove for further arcane damage. Innervate because we love our healers and want to keep them with mana so we can stay full health ourselves. And finally on the last row we have Incap Roar, Ursine's Vigor for form swapping bonus. Circle of Heavens, a new talent to increase magical damage, Forest Walk, because once again, we want to go faster. And lastly, another new talent, Symbiotic Relationship. Now, this has a lot of potential, but comes with being observant and making sure it's up, as it really does play into this sort of heal over time build, evening out the fact that Guardian has one of the largest health pools to act like a sponge. On the Guardian side of the tree, there hasn't been too many changes, so I'm only going to focus on how it plays into the class tree. And first we have Dream of Cenarius, which is a regrowth-based heal, a great oh crap heal that benefits from Forest Walk, as well as lingering healing. Then you also have the reworked Invigoration, where when you cast Frenzied Regeneration, you also get a complementary rejuvenation and regrowth, which once again plays into Forest Walk and lingering healing. Tripling down on that, you have Circle Life and Death, where healing time effects occur in 15% less time. Also in this tree, we are speccing into Ursol's Warding for the added magical protection based on armor value, with the rest of the tree overall either prioritizing buffing our defensive ability or increasing the arcane damage, which in turn increases our healing coming from that arcane damage, fluffing up that heal over time logic. Looking at the hero talents, I'm just going to talk about the choice nodes as we take Moon Dust for the slow with our Moonfire, Lunation to decrease Lunar Beam's cooldown, Astral Insight to increase arcane damage taken during Incarn, and lastly Stellar Command if you're going to be in tight corners and able to stay still, versus going with Lunar Calling to take Thrash arcane base damage if you're looking to have to be on the move, all of which increases your healing. Lastly, we have the PvP talents, and first and foremost, you're going to want Emerald Slumber for the CD reduction. After that, you are looking at Mobility with Malorn Swiftness for speed increase and stability in travel form, and Tireless Pursuit for the continued speed while form swapping between dodging slows and snares. Of note, you still have Overrun, which is a great option if you know you won't be able to swap constantly and will be in bear lot, as well as Demoralizing Roar and Grover Protection still are very great additional defensive cooldowns depending on the enemy's comp. Alright, so let's put it all together and talk about your general rotation, and if you haven't already, I recommend you go watch my last video as I talk about defensive usage, with the only real change being that Iron Fur is now a viable option for magical damage reduction. Anywho, the premise here is moonfiring everything for damage reduction on that target, slowing them, and building your heal over time due to the arcane damage. This also benefits you when Lunar Beam is on cooldown, so you can spam it almost every global if needed to get Lunar Beam off of cooldown. Outside of that, most of the healing done is passive, with Frenzied Regeneration giving you more control to ease out those big damage spikes between defensive usage, as well as Dream of Cenarius giving you an on-demand large heal with a high frequency of being proc. These latter spells also play into your Forest Walk, increasing movement speed, and Symbiotic Relationship, furthering this premise of building a large heal. Other than that, your rotation is filled with Mangle procs for bonus rage, and staggering your Iron Fur cast to maintain uptime of at least 1 or 2 and ensuring you don't rage cap. The rest of the build then plays into your increased mobility via Wild Charge, Roots, Incap Roar into a Grip for a bonus, but even then utilizing your PvP talents to maintain that movement speed with some relief via Ursine Vigor when swapping, because once again, the best way to deal with damage is by avoiding it. Switching over to the basic sitting build, Elune's Chosen will be your most survivable by far. The differences with this build from the last occur largely on the Druid side of the tree, with us taking Rake for stealth stun, Hibernate to be able to hit opposing bases if needed, Astral Influence to increase spin range of Moonfire, Renewal for a big heal since you're more likely to be defending a base solo, Typhoon for knock, and Gale Winds to increase that knock size. In turn, you are losing Asina's Renewal, which is a smaller heal over 30 seconds, Feline Swiftness, Ursine Vigor, Innervate, Symbiotic Relationship, and Forest Walk. Now, in the hero talents, the same premise applies to Stellar Command versus Lunar Calling, pick your flavor, but in the middle column, we do switch to the Light of the Elune, losing Astral Insight. Wrapping this build out with the PvP talents, I once again suggest Emerald Slumber for the CD reset, Den Mother for the stun reduction if, for example, the enemies have a rogue or stacked on stuns. Otherwise, Demoralizing Roar and Grove Protection for additional defensive defensive capability. Of note, and if curious, since this build is still Elun's chosen, the rotation remains the same. So here we are. I suppose we need to talk about Blitz, as it doesn't look like it's going away. So with an increase in people asking me about playing Guardian in Blitz, let's talk about a build that gets you killing blows and raiding. Now, of course, if you are carrying a flag or sitting a base, the other two builds work great, but this one is when you find yourself in that weird position where you need the DPS. For example, Silver Shard Mines, Deep Hall Ravine, or Temple of Katmogu. As you can see, we switch over to the Druid of the Claw hero talent, and up first, let's talk about what's different on the class side of the tree from the previous builds. Not only are we taking Rake for stun, but Grievous Wounds for increased damage, Primal Fury for Mangle crit, as well as a chance at bonus combo points when getting a crit and cat, Instincts of the Claw for increased damage to bite and maul, Ursine's Vigor for added defense while form swapping for damage, Lycera's Meditation for maintaining form stat buffs for 5 seconds after shifting, Fluid Form to make jumping in and out of cat and bear easier without wasting a global, and Heart of the Wild for increased damage in cat burst windows. Then we have Circle of the Wild to increase physical damage. Side note, you can swap between the renewals depending on if you're doing objectives with the team or solo. On the Guardian side of the tree, we continue to play into increasing our physical damage, which are all old talents, so for the sake of not boring you, I'll move on to the hero talents. Looking at the choice nodes, we go with Wild Power Surge, which after stacking Mangle to 6 gives you 5 combo points in cat to deliver a heavily buffed Rip or Bite, Killing Strikes for the stat stick, as well as armor increase with Iron Fur, but more importantly, to be able to proc Ravage with the first Mangle in combat to apply the Dreadful Wound Bleed, which also happens to reduce damage you take from them. And lastly, Strike for the Heart, which increases your crit strike for Shred, Swipe, and Mangle, while also giving Mangle a 1% heal. When looking at the PvP talents for this build, your first go-to will be Master Shapeshifter for the damage increase while in cat, as well as the rage bonus when returning to bear. Other than that, if you are looking at being in the team fight, Alpha Challenge is a great go-to due to its damage increase debuff when using Growl, as well as Den Mother to increase the overall health of your teammates within 15 yards. Charging Bash is a great go-to for the increase of interrupt range as well as mobility in certain circumstances, with Demoralizing Roar or even Grove of Protection still being great options based on your objective role. Putting it all together, you are still prioritizing your defensives as is normal, but know you are losing a level of survivability for a larger amount of damage. But you will find you can easily leave most 1v1 fights with your opponent dead on the ground scratching their head as they just got their ass beat by a Guardian Druid. As of your rotation, and excluding your defensive usage, there is a lot due to the constant form swapping. But in general, your priority in bear is Mangle, followed by Thrash, Swipe as a filler. Although with this build, your first Mangle in combat will proc Ravage and should be used immediately for the bleed. Otherwise, you are looking at stacking Vicious Cycle via Mangle for up to 3, which raises damage by 15% per stack. Other than that, consume your Mangle procs and get to 6 stacks of Wild Power Surge to be ready to switch to cat. Remember, Fluid Form allows you the opportunity to save a global by using Shred or Rake to go into cat form. And once in cat form, consume the Wild Power Surge buff on a Rip for more bleed damage. At that point, you might as well get a couple more combo points for a full bite before using Mangle to switch back into bear. This is where you see the additional benefit of Master Shapeshifter, as it provides you with rage going back into bear because you used a 5-point combo. It is also of note that when switching between the forms, Ravage can only be used in bear. In general, this build provides good pressure, but for bursts, you now have 2. First, you have your cat form burst using Heart of the Wild into cat, stun the target with a Mighty Bash if not stunned already by something else, and then go with Convoke. This particular burst you can use about every minute, and I would use this burst first. Your second burst comes from bear, and in using Berserker's Ravage and Berserker's Unchecked Aggression. And you want to go into it with a full rage bar, as well as, if possible, 3 stacks of Vicious Cycle. When casting Berserk, you have 15 seconds to burn through your rage, and you want to prioritize that Raise spam or Ravage when it procs. Mingle in Mangles to increase the overall maul damage, and then you will just spam that until you're out of rage. At that point, cycle between spamming Mangle, Thrash, and Raise when available. Well, there you have it. That's a whole bunch of information, but people in the past have asked me to go into more detail, so do enjoy. Speaking of enjoyment, this game game is definitely fun, but the wife does enjoy watching the YouTube channel grow more. Something about playing too much video games or something about groceries, I don't know. But seriously, if you enjoy this content, like, share, and please subscribe as it helps me out so much. I also feel very privileged to be able to return the support y'all gave me via our regular Twitch stream raffles of monthly WoW tokens, and speaking of which, March 1st we are celebrating our 2-year anniversary of streaming and creating YouTube content. So I will be raffling off 3 WoW tokens amongst a plethora of other giveaway items, and of course general stream shenanigans, so please come join me. You can find the channel link in the video description below. However, that is it for this video, and as promised, if more information comes available and is beneficial to Guardian Druid PvP, I will let y'all know. Otherwise, this is Moosin, and I hope y'all achieve all your PvP goals going into Season 2 of the War Within.